So we're with Kristy-Barbara Lange, who is the Deputy Managing Director now of European Bioplastics. First of all, congratulations on another excellent conference, and it's good to see this industry coming together every year. It's not been the most dynamic period for the bio-based sector. I think, what is it, 4.1 million tons now, gone up slightly, looking at some growth over the next 5 years, maybe adding another 20%, 30%. Why is it so slow? 50. Okay.
Yes, 2 million were rising, but yes, our calculations in the last years were a bit steeper. Sorry, you wanted to finish your
Well, I was just going to ask you why it's slow. Is it the oil price?
Well, the oil price certainly has a bit to do with that, but the good thing then is we're still growing despite the low oil price. But, well, you know that bio-based PET was a huge growth driver and that predictions were very, very, well, extremely high and nearly carrying all the growth. And, well, there were several facilities planned all around the world, a lot in Asia, and 2 are not happening. That sometimes happens, intensive investments and planning and so on. 2 are not coming, so we had to cut bio-PET a bit, and that were 2 million tons. So.
I feel we heard somebody mention at some point that Coca-Cola were going to struggle to hit their 100% bio-PET bottle by, was it 2020? I can't remember what the target was now.
Well, I cannot remember either, but I think that it was a question rather of the economical interest to have the terephthalic acid really also bio-based.
Okay.
So that is a bit different. I mean, the partial bio-based PET could have continued to grow anyway, but as I said, 2 facilities not going on stream or are not happening. And as we are still not super huge, we're still at 1% of plastic production, then 2 facilities are making a cut somewhere, right?
You've done very well in getting EU acknowledgement for the conference and EU participation from the right people. Are they giving you the right amount of support, though?
Well, let's say we had a representative of the Directorate General Environment here, Mr. Shali. His unit is going to be responsible for drafting the plastic strategy next year. He's also involved in fertilizer, regulation revision, etc. So he's really the guy to go to. And then there was Waldemar Kütt of the Research and Development unit. So basically research and development has been in touch with bioplastics a long time. So Mr. Kütt has a very, very high level of knowledge about bioplastics and sees it from a scientific perspective. He sees what's possible and what not. And we feel that environment sometimes is a bit, critically evaluating biofuel legislation of the past decade and is a bit stuck in that respect to not going, let's call it very overboard again, and so they're a bit frozen. So we hope that practical approaches like having certain applications and looking what's already there, the good products in the market that they're really making use in a circular context.
Yeah, I think their experience, real or perceived, with biofuel hasn't helped, but I think you're overcoming that. But you're just talking about Mr. Kütt. Now he questioned the accepted wisdom on the amount of available arable land for the production of bio-based crops. I think he got 1%, we get 0.02. Where's all that discrepancy going?
Well, I think that was a totally different study. We are really looking at bioplastics and we look at our scope, at our material scope. So if we look at these novel bioplastic, the starch blends and the PLA and so on, that is what we have really looked into with process routes per feedstock and looked at how much land is used for which feedstock when you want a ton of that material. So very much in detailed calculation. But and he had a different study that's taking, I think, more materials into account. But his point was very valid when he said, guys, it's nice that you analyze your land use. And actually, I stand very firmly behind the data that we have. But he says you cannot just look at you have to look at scenarios, what's happening with energy and with fuels and so on. Of course, we're not the only ones on the planet. So that's a takeaway for the next year, definitely to see how, when we get more, how would that impact and how would that fit together with other bioeconomy fields.
Okay. As an industry, as a sector, I mean, we're at pains to point out that biodegradables can be just as much part of the circular economy as bio-based drop-ins, in that they sort of work their way around one way or the other. Do the EU see it that way as well, do you think?
Well, I think that was Mr. Kut. He knows all the bioplastics, and Mr. Scholli also has a lot of information there. But it depends on when you look at recycling. Well, you know that there's mechanical recycling and organic recycling. Sure. Different outputs. Mechanical recycling, you have the material again and again and again. Hopefully, if it functions, if it's collected, that's the first step they're working on, right? And organic recycling, we think it's definitely a valuable part, because you strengthen the secondary raw material market. You have the organic fertilizers then, or the bio waste collected to make more industrial products or valuable humus. So it's really necessary to get to further organic recycling, and our products can be tools to facilitate that. They help to close the loop, so they should have a place in the circular economy. They are necessary to get it done.
Absolutely. It was interesting that they very quickly flagged up this scare statistic of 9 billion people needing to be fed by 2050. I mean, I can't believe that was just coincidence. Were they trying to sort of position bio-based in the context of priorities, feeding people being the greater one?
Well, it needs to be considered like that. So they definitely need to have this huge calculation in their heads when they're thinking about supporting the industrial use of biomass. But as we can see from numerous studies, there is still unused land. It always depends on how to use it, and we should not forget. And it's really a bit annoying that people forget about that. How many times was the word mentioned biorefinery? Not so many times, and it should have been at the heart of all these discussions, because it's not one or the other. You have a plant which uses land, and then you have food, feed, and bioplastics, or whatever industrial product you want out of that. And the land use should actually be allocated to all of these three products. And we, with our tiny number, we're just giving it to the industrial product right now. So it's even a worst case scenario.
This is a hard road you tread every year relentlessly. I mean, we all know that the oil is running out, that eventually this is going to be the only game in town. But you keep saying it, and we still are a fraction of an increasingly affordable oil-based alternative. So when do you think the tipping point's going to come? When is that quantum leap moment going to come, when suddenly it's a bio-based reality?
I'm not sure if that sudden moment is coming, but I think the next 2 years will be very important, because, maybe there will not be a huge, avalanche, and everything will be bio-based. But I think we have so many dossiers at European level at the moment who are important, and of course that will also trigger national dossiers then after these 2 years. If we have in the revision of the fertilizer directive, if we have there, for example, something for a certain product, agricultural mulch film, biodegradable mulches, if we maybe get some support for bio-based packaging materials on the same level as recycled content in the packaging waste directive, or if, there will be something on eco-design, or the plastic strategy gives certain guidance for certain products. As I said, and I just can stress it once more, we don't want a comprehensive framework that cements everything for industry tomorrow. We want a step-by-step approach, but I think it's really time for the Commission and all the DGs that are involved to consider these products, and not just to, and not over-discuss every time. There are standards, there are products. Make first step in that direction, and then we can assess, but they need to be in the market. We cannot answer all the market-relevant questions when it's not in the market.
So say all of us. I think it was a lady from Tetra Pak who said, perfect is the enemy of the good.
Yes, I like that very much, because, you can always try to... Do you know that expression, egg laying wool milk sow?
No.
We have that in Germany. You try to get everything out of one thing, and you wait 100 years until you have that,
Yeah.
I cannot answer questions that will be highly theoretical at this point and maybe never happening. And I think we should not block innovation completely. We should be careful what steps we are doing, but we should not freeze in place.
Good. Let's get on. Thank you.
Thank you, Tudas.